Mr. President, I'm so grateful to Senator Sanders because he explains things like no one else. He takes it down to the average working family in America, and that's really who we're here to protect, not the super top rich people. They're doing fine. Senator Sanders taught me something this morning. I'm just going to make sure I remember it correctly, that the wealth of the top 14 richest people in America in the last couple of years went up over $100 billion. How much was it?
$157 billion in a 2-year period.
In a 2-year period, the wealthiest of the wealthiest, 14 people, that wealth rose $157 billion. And yet and still, when you look at this Republican budget, those people get every benefit you can imagine. They are not asked to do a thing. A thing. When people are struggling, sending their kids to college, Lord knows. When people are struggling, trying to afford a new home. When people are struggling every day to make ends meet. Some even to put nutritious food on the table. This budget is a blueprint of unfairness. This budget, this Republican budget, is a blueprint for another recession. This is a terrible budget, and it makes believe it balances. It doesn't balance one bit. And our ranking member will explain the smoke and mirrors that have been used in this budget. I used to serve on the Budget Committee. Let me be clear to anyone within the sound of my voice. In recent times, the only time the budget was balanced was when President Clinton was president, and only Democrats voted for his budget. We balanced the budget, and you know what? We created 23 million jobs because we invested in people, in education, in our children. Not this budget. They cut deep cuts out of domestic spending. They take $236 billion over 10 years from non-defense. That means they're cutting education, scientific research, food safety, law enforcement, every single program that the middle class depends on, and working Americans. And I want to thank the ranking member of the Budget Committee. He's taking such leadership in his position here and on the Environment and Public Works Committee by calling attention to our failing infrastructure. 63,000 bridges, to be exact, 63,500 bridges are structurally deficient in America, and 50% of our roads are in less than good condition. And what does this Republican budget do? And by the way, this is a big problem for our businesses. They cut 17% to overall spending, ignoring the fact that our roads are in disrepair, ignoring the fact that we face the prospect of crumbling bridges. That is a blow to everyone who drives on our roads. And at a time when energy costs are weighing heavily on families and businesses, they cut 85% in overall energy spending, including weatherization funding. What are they thinking? When a middle-class family weatherizes their home, the energy bill goes down. They're putting a tax on every middle-class person who has to pay a heating bill. Energy efficiency grants, no, cut. Research into clean energy, cut. A blow to our consumers and to our efforts to mitigate climate change. At a time when college is a necessity and a priority, they want to cut Pell Grant funding by 30% over 10 years and to reduce overall spending on education and training by 15%. A blow to our students. Oh, not the students whose parents are in that top echelon. No problem there. They can afford $40,000 a year college, 30, 60. But to our middle class and those striving to be in the middle class, they are doomed with this budget. Now, President Obama has turned this Great Recession around. But our ranking member points out the problems that remain. But the solutions aren't that hard to come by. You make investments, not wasteful spending, investments in energy, investments in transportation, investments in finding cures for diseases. And what do? You make this a greater country, and you make lives better across the board. 45 million people are still recovering from the recession, including 16 million children who live in poverty. They, the Republicans, they leave the top echelon alone, who are making billions of dollars, and they're cutting $660 billion from income security over 10 years. That means they're cutting supplemental nutrition assistance, school lunch, unemployment insurance, earned income tax credit. I don't know who they represent, who they think they represent, but I'll tell you who they fight for. The wealthiest of the wealthiest few. That's who they fight for. That old notion, you give billionaires money and somehow it will trickle down to the rest of us. It doesn't work. It doesn't work to cut education funding. It doesn't work to cut transportation funding. It doesn't work to cut energy assistance programs. I gotta say, it is a shock to see this budget. And if that's why they think they got elected, then the people better pay attention. And listen what they do with health care. They do away with the Affordable Care Act. When 16 million people now have insurance who didn't have it before, and guess what? Do they have a replacement? They're working on it. Oh, good. We've worked on it for 50 years. We finally got it done. It's not perfect, but it's working. In my state, it is magnificent to see people who now know they won't lose everything if they get sick. At a time when 70 million Americans rely on Medicaid and children's health coverage, they want to block grant that program and cut it by more than $1.2 trillion. What will it mean for maternity care when half of all births in the U.S. are financed by Medicare? Another blow to our families, to our babies. They fight for your right to be born. How about after you're born? How about after you're born? At a time when more than 50 million seniors and disabled Americans are in Medicare and the baby boomers continue to age in, they want to cut Medicare by $430 billion. Now look, they're afraid to spell out how they want to cut it. They kind of hide it in the document, but we know what happens. People will be suffering, paying more, getting less care. A blow to our seniors. They do not close one tax loophole for the wealthiest corporations, some of whom pay no income tax, or these billionaires. Now, I have nothing against being a billionaire at all. But this Congress ought to ask everyone to pay a fair share, including billionaires, not just the middle class. Now, their gimmicks are unbelievable. They hide defense spending in an off-budget account called OCO. Oh, no. OCO. They hide it, but we got their number. As I think Al Sharpton says on his show, we got you. We know what you're doing. Where's the emergency fund for our children? Where's the emergency fund for education? Where's the emergency fund for transportation? No, there's no OCO for that. No. And then they claim they balanced the budget. That's the biggest fib ever. Look at their record. When George W. Bush got elected, he had a surplus. It took him 15 minutes to blow it. Wars, 2 wars on the credit card. Tax cuts to the rich on the credit card. This budget continues that legacy of shame. Shame. Hurting our seniors, hurting our children, hurting our middle class, all at the expense of the wealthy few. We see that President Obama has cut this deficit by more than half. We're on the right track. Let's not walk away from policies that work. And I want to say, the ranking member, Senator Sanders, I strongly am supporting your amendment on infrastructure. Because to be a great nation, we have to move people, we have to move goods. This is a global marketplace. The ships are coming in to California, 40% of the imports. Then they go on, they're transferred to trucks. They go on roads that are full of potholes, that are a mess. They have rail crossing that are dangerous and so on. So I'll conclude in 20 more seconds, if I might, 20 seconds additional. I'll conclude. I want to thank our ranking member on the budget because he talks from the heart, the soul, and from facts. And if we'd followed his leadership rather than the leadership of those on the other side of the aisle who want to go back to the days of high deficits, high unemployment, and chaos, and we were here, we know there was chaos, then vote for this Republican budget. I hope we'll vote no, and I hope we'll support the amendments that come forward to put us on the right track again. Thank you very much. I yield the floor.